We have a lot of members here, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to weigh in with those who we've invited. I'm just going to ask a really quick question, and I think this is probably directed to you, Vice Chairman Hill, because Senator Schatz has mentioned it. I mentioned it in my comments. It was mentioned by several of our tribal leaders here. The impact that prediction markets pose to tribal and other gaming operations in terms of the revenues that then come and support in so many, many different ways. Does IGA have the research on the impact of prediction markets on the tribal gaming revenues? It's important around here for people to understand, what are we really talking about? I am not only the chairman of this Indian Affairs Committee, but I'm chairman of the Interior Appropriations Committee. And believe you me, if we have to figure out where in our interior appropriations we are going to backfill the losses that come if prediction markets truly do take over, do we have that data, and can we do a better job in collecting and analyzing it and sharing it?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. Currently, IGA is working on analyzing national data and the impacts of prediction markets on tribal sports gambling. The data is primarily proprietary, say that word right, proprietary, and to obtain it, we would have to have the tribes give us that data. So it's. Is
that something that you think there's a willingness to share because of the impact? And
yeah, I definitely think so. I know, like in the state of Wisconsin, the tribes in the state are working together to analyze the sports book market for the state of Wisconsin. Again, just for getting those verifiable numbers and that analysis for the tribes and the state to work off of. So there is definitely forward movement. We're actually expecting that phase 1 of that report due in about 10 or 15 days.
Okay, I think it's really important to try to get that. Senator Schatz?
I'm going to try to do this quick, and so because we have so many people, I will try not to chew up 5 minutes. Quick question for each, one sentence if possible, and you're free to agree with each other. What is the one thing that we should be doing in the short run? Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
I think the amendments to the Clarity Act would be probably step 1, or moving forward with the Senate bill that prediction markets, are sports betting.
Mr. McCarroll.
Enforcing existing law, the CEA itself prohibits gaming. That go from there. Also, though, fill out the commission. It is really an abomination. It's an upside-down regulatory agency to have one commissioner when there are 4 vacant seats on that commission.
And I would echo that. The need for us to have some solid regulatory framework to look at and have a clear understanding of what is intended by the laws versus how they're being interpreted and applied. If we were able to get some clarity, if you will, no pun intended, on that issue, that would be a great benefit.
Agreed with that. Legislate in a way that makes clear that poorly fit financial derivatives law does not preempt state and tribal law in the way that is being litigated across the country.
Emphasis on short term that you can actually do. Bring the sports league commissioners in, place them under oath, get to the bottom of why they are selling their data for gambling purposes on prediction markets. The New York Mets entered into a multi-billion-dollar contract with a brand new prediction market yesterday. You could have hearings today similar to the tobacco hearings. Things will change.
Colleague, Senator Smith.
Yep. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. You know, I serve both on this committee and also on the Agriculture Committee. Chair Bozeman can vouch for how I have asked many of these questions of the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, as well as we try to figure out like how it is that we have this sort of just rapid expansion of prediction markets in complete contravention to IGRA and state tribal compacts and tribal sovereignty. So your points are really so well taken. Two quick things. I think I saw data, which appreciate what Senator Murkowski was asking. I think I saw data from the American Gaming Association, which said that they estimated that it was roughly $1 billion in state and tribal revenue that has been lost. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, and I don't know how they gathered that information, but just to give us a sense of scope of what we're talking about in terms of lost revenue. I don't want to put you on the spot, Mr. Hill, because I know you don't know where that data came from either, but how does that sound to you?
Yeah, I think that's important information, but then also looking at the numbers that we're able to report on about the NIGC's report that tribal gaming has expanded about 4 or 5%.
Yes, right.
24 to 25. But then you look at those totals from the prediction markets of 2,000% growth from 1 year over the next. So that's really, I think, very expansive numbers, and being able to that definitely has to have an effect on legal gambling in all the states where it's allowed.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just the quickest answer I can give is in California alone, we think there's at least a 5% revenue hit, I suppose is the best way to say that. It is based on AGA's numbers. And so this is a very qualified answer. And I wanted to ask if the record for this roundtable would be open, if there is a record that would be open subsequent to this. We'd like to get better metrics in so that will underscore the receipts for what I just said. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. And then just quickly, following up on what Senator Schaas was asking about, I mean, would it not make sense to have an amendment to the Clarity Act or potentially to the Farm Bill, which would just clarify that the CFTC does not preempt IGRA or tribal state compacts or tribal sovereignty, that prediction markets should abide by existing law? I think, Mr. Hummingbird, you laid out, I think I heard 3 things that we would want to accomplish. And it seems to me that we have potentially moving vehicles that we could use to address these issues, which are urgent in a timely manner.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
I just wanted to, you don't even need to answer. I just want to point out to the committee that I think we do have moving vehicles that could, just clarify that the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the Commodity Futures Act does not preempt IGRA or tribal state compacts, and that prediction markets need to abide by existing law. That seems to me to be a fairly simple and should be non-controversial.
It should be. I agree with that, Senator. But unfortunately, sometimes common sense isn't so common these days. But those are things that should be fairly, in my estimation, fairly easy to address, because there are very clear legislative languages out there that point to what is intended, what is acceptable versus what is not. And if we have the ability to go and clarify, to say that no, as Chairman Maccaro so rightfully pointed out, that was not the intent of the CEA, and for a federal agency to unilaterally decide that it knows the law better than those that passed it, I think is a wrong move to take.
Thank you.
Well, fortunately, we have a common sense chairman of the Agriculture Committee who's working on a farm bill. Your not response necessarily to Senator Smith, but any comment?
No. I think it's really important that you all are up here. All of us have a real concern, especially about underage gambling, and then again you get into all this situations of insider trading and this and that. So I think you've got a really good case to make. I don't think enough people up here understand it yet. The remarkable thing about the prediction markets is how fast they've grown. Nobody envisioned this happened, within, what'd you say, early 25 or
2,000% growth year over year.
So that's amazing. Again, with it appears only growing larger. So I would encourage you to have these, get up here and continue to visit with members, build your coalition, because you're not alone. There's a lot of other people that are such as the nice lady that's sitting next to me, the senator from Nevada, there's a lot of people that are very, very concerned about it. As far as sticking in clarity and sticking in the Farm Bill, the problem there is that you're conflating issues. I mean, there's a lot of people that are working hard on the Farm Bill, and the Farm Bill's the Farm Bill, but this really doesn't have anything to do with the Farm Bill. See what I'm saying? I mean, just, it'd be like you having an important bill and somebody sticking the Farm Bill in your bill. So I don't think those things are going to happen. I think you run into the same problem with clarity in the sense that crypto is not prediction markets. So I think you've got to build your case. I'm very sympathetic. I want to help you. But I think that's the way you do it. It's just what you're doing now. I think your testimonies today were great. And it's really interesting. You did a really good job of having a lot of different insights into this. It's not like, everybody's saying the same thing. You all did a really good job. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. I want to thank you all as well, and I appreciate the chairman being here because this has helped me to understand as well as I work on the market structure for clarity, which is to give the crypto, some sort of market structure and regulation for cryptocurrency. What is your concern that somehow that opens the door for this type of prediction market to continue through cryptocurrency? And maybe the solicitor, let me have you address that.
I think maybe this connects back to something Senator Smith was asking about as well. One of the things that has been a large part of the fight here is trying to fit these sports betting wagers and these prediction markets or these trades that are happening into a particular financial instrument that's already being regulated under federal law. Now, the Commodity Exchange Act lists a number of instruments, options, futures, and the one that we keep fighting about is swaps for the most part. And I think with respect to, first of all, clarity, one of the things that's critical is clarity in defining an instrument and saying this instrument is this and this instrument is not this. So one of the critical things that could be helpful from the perspective of regulating sports betting as not a financial derivative is to say that this is not one of those instruments. And I think by saying what it is not and giving clarity to that, it's not just about whether state law is preempted, which is the second question. It's the first question is, does the Commodity Exchange Act even cover this? And so to the extent that further definitions actually clarify that these instruments don't touch on sports wagers or other forms of gambling, it would actually make it less likely to, shovel in or tunnel in instruments that don't really belong under federal law.
So let me see if I understand and clarify this. If we do not address this issue in the Clarity Act, but, for instance, we do pass the Prediction Markets or Gambling Act and outlaw it everywhere else, but it's allowed in this legislation, crypto, and on the blockchain, there's a world where in crypto and the blockchain, prediction markets could exist and still do sports wagering and gambling and casino-style gambling, correct?
I think that's right, but with one caveat. I think cryptocurrencies might fall under other forms of regulation under federal law, including, for example, the Securities Exchange Act. So I think we do need to be careful about how these instruments are being defined, whether they fall under the Commodity Exchange Act's umbrella or some other federal law. And so to the extent that I am comfortable speaking about the Commodity Exchange Act, because that's where all of the prediction market litigation has been, it's harder to know what would happen with cryptocurrency without fully examining the scope of other federal law.
So what you're looking for is just the clear definition that this new financial market should not allow this type of gaming, prediction markets, in the way that they're trying to do right now in sports wagering and gambling.
I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Prediction markets have been around a long time. The prediction markets aren't new. Taking this type of action is what's new. And to go back to combine this with Senator Smith's question, as it relates to preemption, I think the missing link there, Senator, is that this hasn't been declared gambling. If this were declared gambling, the prediction markets wouldn't be able to say, well, we're under the purview of CFTC. Mm-hmm. That seems to me to be the easiest thing to get a majority view on here. This is gambling. Once you do that, other things fall into place. Right. And, Senator, in response to your concerns about what happened with crypto, I agree with the Solicitor General, because you would then be down to some very narrow issues, and you could put a lot of friction in those issues. Could it still exist in some world? Yeah. Would that world be the mental health and public health threat that we see today? No.
Well, and let me just put a finer point on this, is because this issue that we're talking about right now is still working its way through the courts. Mm-hmm. And some of the courts, I know in Nevada, Kalshi is temporarily banned from operating in the state because a judge has found its event contracts to be indistinguishable from traditional sports betting. Right? So there's still a state of flux here, and the goal here is, and I think from what I'm hearing from all of you, is to figure out how we preserve the state's rights, federal Indian gaming rights to regulate this, like they traditionally have done, sports betting as well as casino-style gaming. Am I missing that? Is that correct?
I just take it a step further, though, because there still needs to be minimum federal safety. So you can't just pass this back and have patchwork of 50 different states. There has to be minimum federal safety standards under the plenary authority of Congress, whether we're talking about sports contracts under prediction markets or we're talking about more traditional same-game parlays on DraftKings. There is an overwhelming need. We've seen in the 8 years since Murphy. This is out of control. What we should all be agreeing on is we need minimum federal safety standards that governs all of this.
All right.
Then you turn to
let me
states'
just
rights.
have one final question, because I know, and I think this is the distinction. Let me ask you, what rules and regulations do tribal regulated sports books have to follow that Kalshi and other prediction markets do not? And what I mean by that is, I know traditionally there's been consumer protection issues that many have to follow to guard against, right? There's suspicious betting activities, illicit activity, money laundering, those types of things. I'm curious, what's the difference between Indian gaming and what Kalshi has to do?
Well, thank you for that. Yes, the tribal gaming regulators across the country operate a multi-level, multi-tiered system. We have a number of regulations, not only from the federal government, but also through our tribal state compacts that we are obligated to ensure are being implemented effectively. Anti-money laundering is a very good piece, a very good example to use in this situation. Because as we stand right now, there are no requirements for prediction markets to produce any type of effort to go towards and identify the individuals that are placing their prediction market or purchasing their event contracts or their swaps.
Thus, age restrictions as well. You have an age restriction
we have age
that you follow
restrictions.
that they do not.
And I firsthand know that there are individuals in my state of Oklahoma that we have individuals that are able, as young as 15, to go out and create an account using their own debit cards that they have from their mom and their dad and wager on baseball. I saw that happen. And so when we have age restrictions, we have know your customer, KYC restrictions for processing financial transactions. We have to have a face to go along with this. So not only do we have the money laundering issues here, but there's also other illicit activities that could follow with that.
And if a gaming Indian gaming facility were to run afoul of this and violate these regulations, is it possible you could lose your license? The individual casino could lose its license altogether, correct?
If there were a violation, if the tribal gaming regulators were not able to correct that, then yes, it could get us to have some negative repercussions through.
And if somebody if a company like Kalshi and others run afoul of this, what happens to them? What's the repercussions?
There is none.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Senator Armstrong?
Thank you. And my questions are going to go kind of along the same lines here as Senator Cortez Masto. I think there's two things here. There's the health issue, which you raised, Dr. Lamont, which it seems like you're suggesting that needs to be a federal level issue. And then there's the economic issue that would affect states like Oklahoma that has tribal gaming as a big part of its economy. And so maybe I'm going to start with the health piece of this first. Are you suggesting that the same health standards would apply to this as would apply to Indian gaming, and how does that work today? That doesn't connect for me all that well.
Sir, I think it is both. I respect the 10th Amendment. I think that the role of Congress is to create minimum federal safety standards governing gambling. The courts are going to sort out whether sports contracts are gambling or not. They are, but it's going to take some time to sort it out. We should all, in this new world of online gambling, be able to agree there needs to be some minimum federal safety standards. And I would look forward to working with tribal leaders tribal leaders have decades of experience working with government regulators. I would think reasonable minds would come together and say, you know what? Nobody wins unless everybody wins. Let's come up with safety standards and then turn to the states and the tribal nations to go further if they want. But right now, it is truly, because of the world of online gambling, the wild, wild west. That's where Congress comes in with minimum standards and then respects the 10th Amendment for states to go further if they like.
Okay, thank you. And Chairman Hummingbird, would you see that if we did have those federal safety standards, how would you see those being implemented in IGRA?
If the federal safety standards that we have?
Yeah, the federal safety standards that we would impose on prediction betting, how would you see those applying equally and enforced in the same way at Indian gaming?
Yeah, exactly. If there are federal regulations out there, safeguards for this, at present there are not. There's nothing comparable from the CFTC that even remotely approaches what we have in Indian gaming. We're even on the tribal state compact side of things. So in order for them to offer something that we feel is equally covered under our existing frameworks, our existing tribal state compacts, we would expect CFTC and the operators in the prediction market realm to follow as robust a regulatory scheme as we have. But right now, there is no indication that is the intent.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then on the tribal economic side, I think Chair Murkowski asked this already, but I just want to dig in on this a little bit because in Oklahoma the sports book has been an issue in play for a long time in terms of state versus tribes, and I'm curious how well you all have been measuring the impact of online betting, including sports betting and including the prediction markets, and how big of an impact you all think that is to the Oklahoma tribes?
I would say at this point it may be a little bit early to comment on that. I mean, since this is still, it's been a growing industry, and as the chairman had pointed out, that this has grown exponentially over the last year. So the real ability for us to measure the actual financial impact is not going to be known to us probably for a little bit more time. We can say, however, just by the numbers that have been voluntarily reported, or at least some estimates from our fellow economists out there, that there are hundreds of millions to billions of dollars that have been removed from legal betting avenues, whether that be through the states or through the tribes. So if we were to use that as a measuring stick, I would say you're looking at a significant reduction in the amount of funds that have been available through legal sports betting and have been processed through these unregulated markets.
Okay. And maybe just at a high level, what's been the trend of Indian gaming revenues through this period as we've seen this growth in prediction market betting?
Senator, if I could speak to
Please,
that.
thank you.
Because, of course, we're aware that the National Indian Gaming Commission publishes revenues, tribal revenues in the aggregate. And the most recent report indicates another year of record level revenue production. But that's where I think there needs to be caution when you interpret what that means. the NRGC's aggregate revenue report gets the causality backwards. That growth, you need to take into account that it reflects more tribes opening gaming operations for the first time last year in that reporting period. And that's been the case in every reporting year. Every year, another few or several dozen, the number varies, more gaming operations open up from year to year. So the overall aggregate number does not necessarily reflect existing operations that are doing better. What would be a truer number would be to compare same facility year-over-year performance, and we think that would present a very different picture if that were to be done. So aggregate growth from new entrants doesn't really tell us anything meaningful about where prediction markets are eroding customer base of facilities that are already operating. Now, I can tell you on an individual basis, tribal property by tribal property, I'm fairly certain we track revenue in similar fashion. For instance, this particular week in August, the first week of August, I know that our tribal gaming facility knows what revenue was generated on this day, which was today, Tuesday, on this day last year for this first week of August, and the year before that, and the year before that. We can compare week to week like that over different years, month to month, and then, of course, years by years. So when, for instance, there was a time during COVID, during the pandemic, when all our facilities were shut down for 2.5, almost 3 months. And during that time period, card clubs opened up, and we could see what their operation was like. And then there was a time when we opened back up during the pandemic, and they were closed, and we could see the delta between the two, and we knew what the impact was. Well, we're seeing that now. We don't have those quantifications or metrics ready to hand over yet, which is why I asked about the open record, how long that record would be open for this. But we see those impacts because revenue is tracked daily, weekly, monthly, and compared. So we can look immediately pre-test where prediction markets started to operate in California, and sports betting is illegal in California. So with the onset and growth during that time period, we see how that tracks with revenue production. And we know that property by property, there are over 55 in California. Those are the reports that we are all seeing.
I just want to add a little bit.
I'm going to interrupt here just for a moment and be very rude because I have a 5:15 Zoom that I'm going to zoom off to. It's to the Alaska Native Health Board, and this is actually going to be one of the issues that I raise with them when we're talking about mental health and how we deal with things that are evolving very fast. But we are not concluding this. This is a roundtable, so I'm not gaveling out. This record is going to be part of our committee roundtable. Senator Lujan, I want you to have the chance to ask any follow-ons and any other additional questions that members may have or final comments. This is kind of like everybody's dream. The chairman and the vice chairman leave the room, and the mics are still on. But I think this speaks to the degree of interest, the challenge that we have in front of us. It is moving so fast. The impact is so great. And we don't have all of the data that we need now. So getting this information is greatly appreciated. And I truly appreciate the interest from so many members. So I'm going to scooch out of here. Staff will keep us all honest in terms of when we turn off the lights. But thank you for
Thank you, Madam Chair.
appearing.
Thank you, Senator.
Colleagues, thank you.
Senator. Thank you.
No, go ahead.
Everyone, thank you for taking time to. Thank you for being here today, and everyone that's been in here, and all the staff that are in here as well. I wanted to follow up with one of the questions that was asked by Senator Smith of Minnesota about that points back to the correspondence that the Indian Gaming Association sent to every senator. In it provides 2 bullet points in here. Number 1, number 2, about language that is being more than recommended, advocated for, to address the issue that we're talking about here. I want to zero in on the second one, the second bullet, which states that language should make clear that the decentralized finance cannot be used to evade, override, or preempt state, tribal, or federal gambling laws. The DeFi section of the bill released from the Agriculture Committee creates an exemption. That exemption, without this language, will create a loophole. Is that the right way to interpret that?
Yes,
Chairman?
I believe so.
And so I don't think it was anyone's intention to create a loophole for prediction markets. I've not heard that yet in all the meetings I've been in and conversations and all the rest. And if, in fact, the intent of the exemption in the DeFi section is not to create a loophole for prediction markets, then this language just says that there's no gaming, there's no gambling, there's no prediction market in that space. Is that fair, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And I'm not a lawyer. There's a lot of smart lawyers in this room. But I think that doesn't address the first bullet. But if, in fact, the language that was included in the DeFi section of the Ag Bill is the language that, if it's not addressed, creates a loophole for prediction markets and then gambling everywhere, all kinds of gambling, not just prediction market gambling, video slots, video this, video that, it's all allowed everywhere. What's not Kalshi? What's the other one?
Polymarket.
Polymarket. So Polymarket is not DeFi yet. They're in the blockchain, but they're not here yet. And I'll emphasize yet, because if there's a loophole that they can exploit, why not roll in this space? And so, did I describe the second bullet that you put together, Mr. Chairman, in my basic understanding, my simple understanding of what your correspondence was to us as senators?
Yes, that's correct. And I think looking at those as looking at, Polymarket is doing this offshore right now. The Clarity Act brings it into the United States, as you had mentioned. So again, that's just creating that loophole again for these markets to move into another form and further unregulated area that raises very, very broad concern from the tribes across the country.
So if the language that creates the loophole is in this legislation, this should fit.
Correct.
I would ask all the lawyers in the room as well. You can get back to me on that as well. But that does not address number one. I think that, with the recommendation around bullet number one here, that's the Schiff Curtis language as I understand it as well, that is being advocated for. Mr. Chairman Maccaro, did you have a response to that? Or?
I agree with Chairman Dawes.
Okay.
I wanted to touch on a broader point
Yes.
regarding Clarity Act, if you're done.
Please.
Well, look, the Clarity Act represents the most significant expansion of the CEA since 2010, since Dodd-Frank. Significant expansion. The question is, why would Congress support expanding the CFTC's jurisdiction into this Clarity Act space of blockchains and crypto? Why would it support doing that? Expanding authority, expanding jurisdiction at a time when they are violating state laws, when IGRA is being violated, when they are actively suing states, when they are revising long-standing regulations to primarily allow for unregulated gaming, unregulated national gambling under the banner of the CFTC, which has only one of 5 commissioners and 4 vacancies, and what commission could actually provide adequate oversight, even if there were rules there. So, the CFTC is under a condition of regulatory capture right now. So it's really a farce. So it is puzzling that Congress would support the expansion of the CFTC's jurisdiction and authority under these conditions. There needs to be a reset where, until the law actually changes and then the law is enforced, that conditions are right for an expansion of authority and jurisdiction. And until then, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make logical sense, which is in short supply, as my co-panelist here said earlier, to do so and move forward in this manner.
Appreciate that, Chairman. And the way that it's been described to me is the words that I read from that correspondence, that another way to describe that is with spot market limitation, I think. And so people in the room that have worked on legislation know what I'm referring to. That's something that myself and other colleagues have advocated for as well. So I very much appreciate the testimony today. And I just wanted to zero in on, again, reminding us, if language in legislation is what's creating the exemption that could lead to a loophole, then that's the place to address it. And I just wanted to make sure that I was getting that right with everyone. Doctor, did you have something?
Just to follow on what the President is saying, I agree with you. However, you mentioned Polymarket not being official. Polymarket is the official prediction market partner of Major League Baseball and the NHL. They're here. They're operating. Mm-hmm. The issue is there's no enforcement. This is all taking place right now, right in front of our eyes, and you can close a loophole like that. I agree with you, but as the President points out, if we don't enforce something here, you're legislating, and people are throwing their noses at it. It is just taking place at light speed, which is where the mental health and public health crisis comes in, because they're just doing what they want to do. That's why I brought these two little posters. They're advertising, even though 11 states haven't legalized this. They've exercised their sovereign jurisdiction to say no. Minnesota, Senator Swift's state. In they all come. And we're just devoid of any enforcement. And if Congress sits back and waits for these loopholes to get closed through the courts, the crisis is going to grow exponentially. We're talking about people and families. And I think your point is well taken. I just want to take it one step further, because Polymarket's here.
Dr. Levant, the issue that you raised would be addressed by language that is being proposed by two senators, Senator Curtis of Utah, Senator Schiff of California. Mm-hmm. The portion that I was referring to was narrowing in on language that is included in the DeFi section of the Ag released legislation that would create a loophole if it would go into effect. And I do not believe that it was, again, the goal of anyone to create a loophole that would allow prediction markets, spot markets, to also ride in that exemption language that was created for other reasons. Mr. Chairman, last, and then I'll yield back. Yeah. Yes? Mm-hmm.
I think you're very much on point with this, because if we don't have the ability to really point to some definitive language that speaks to what is intended, and it needs to be very clear what was intended so that it can be applied equally as clearly. But if we don't have the ability to say what was intended, what we have right now, for lack of a better term, is a relatively, quote-unquote, small problem. The prediction markets have only been around and really gaining steam over the last year. If we do not address these issues today, in whatever form, whether we're going to put some onus upon the CFTC or restrict them or whatever the form it takes, something's got to be done, because if we don't, we're on a very slippery slope. And particularly when it comes to things along in that crypto area, because what you're going to see right now, you've got 10 actors within the prediction market arena. There's going to be more. And so as we're going to go through this, and it's not necessarily the size that's the problem, it's the underlying issue of whether or not they are going to be allowed to, they being CFTC and even the prediction market operators, are going to be allowed to operate within the space that they define. And if they define that, what's the next step? What's going to be the next thing? Because there's always going to be a next thing. So if we do not take the action that we need to now to nip this in the bud, so to speak, then we are going to be setting ourselves up, not just the tribes or the states, but the entire nation as a whole, for a much larger headache than what we can currently deal with. And if we deal with it now, and I think my panelists here that touched upon that old proverb, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We have the ability now to administer that ounce of prevention, but it must be done, and it must be done pretty quickly.
Let me just respond real quick because it's really interesting that you brought that up. I was asked Nathan about it, who's being the point person on ag, regarding this. Nathan, what we're proposing. Why don't you go to the microphone and tell them what. Yeah, this is your chance to. But again, this is a really important point that the senator brings up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Senator Bozeman. So the language that we used in House or in the ag portion of the bill was passed by House Clarity. We do think it's limited to spot, but we've heard the same. We saw the letter you're referring to, have heard from your colleagues wanting to limit it to spot. So we've also come up with other proposed language that we think limits it to spot as well. Happy to send that to Callie, your staff. And I think I don't speak for Leader Thune, and at this point it's a little bit above our heads, but I think all of this is still up for debate, and so happy to do that.
But we very much want to work with you on that. Again, I really hadn't heard of that, but yeah. So thank you so much for bringing it up, as always.
That's all that I have, Catherine.
Okay.
So I guess let me do this. Let me thank everyone for coming for the working group. We appreciate you all being here. Thanks to my colleagues. And we will end the working group session now.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you
To all senators.
Adjourn the roundtable. And we are adjourning the roundtable. Thank you.
All right.